What's a thing you always wanted as a child that you never got? A normal childhood. While it's unfortunately comforting to feel like I'm not alone, I'm very sorry so many other people are relating to this comment. Good luck to all of you. Same here. Won't bore you with the whole sob story. It would go on forever. But man, I hear you. That's all I wanted. Normalcy. Dude, if you want to vent your story and let it out into the universe, I will support you 100%. Oh thanks, but I have done it before on Reddit. I don't want drudge it up again too much. But if you got something you need to get out, I'm all ears. Please check out RCPTSD, you might find a community with us. You know those cars that are just big enough for kids and you can actually drive around because it has a battery? They always looked fun. Power Wheels. I had one of the very first ones circa 1984 or so. The battery lasted like 30 minutes and then you had to charge it overnight. My son has one now and the battery actually lasts long enough to make it worth having. I'm so jealous. I absolutely loved my Batmobile. At least until I almost decapitated myself trying to go under the unfinished porch and my mom wouldn't let me drive it anymore. That was how you could tell if someone had rich parents as a kid. I have an actual car and yet I was envious AF when my niece received one of those cars. So envious of a toy car. They have ones with remote controls if you have a kid to ride in it. Easy bake oven. Yes, I'm a dude. I ended up studying to be a pastry chef. Hahahab. I got the male version. The creepy crawlers workshop lol. I had something that was like that, but the little creepy crawlers were made of a kind of tough clearish gelatin, and you could color them with a grape flavored marker and eat them. I'm female and I had an incredible edible machine. It made a gummy type candy in the shape of bugs. They tasted pretty nasty. Us girls were big on creepy crawlers too. The second degree burns on my fingertips. Small price to pay for all the fun I had. My sister had one. My dad assumed it needed a heat lamp bulb and it kind of melted lol. I used to be obsessed with dragons and I would ask for dragon bones so I could prove they exist. I never got them, but my parents got me a box of rattlesnake bones for Christmas and that was really cool. As a kid, I remember finding a book in my school library that had a real scientific explanation for dragons. They could breathe fire through a chemical reaction and could fly in the same way hot air balloons could fly. That explains how something so big could fly and the myths about how they could be killed by a single well-placed arrow. The book also mentioned that they probably didn't have bones either, so that they were light enough to fly, and that explains why there are no remains to this day. I wish I could remember the name of that book. I think I recall it was because their diet produced a lot on intestinal methane, and then they ate rocks, like chickens do, and the rocks grinding together in the dragon's crop would ignite the methane burps. Rock'em sock'em robots. Just turned 60. My youngest daughter got it for me for Christmas last year. Exact same. Always wanted them as a kid, but never got them. Now I'm older and don't want them. Just got them about 2 years ago. Will break them out during a lull with friends over and always gets a good 30 minutes of game out of them. Not me, but my father desperately wanted certain apps still legal for kids at that time. Cheap, but they didn't have the money. When I gave him one for his 50th birthday, exact same type, they still make them, and they are cheap. It was the only time I have seen him cry. You'll shoot your eye out, Dad. That would be a Dalton, dead IBB gun like this. Bet those kids will get off my lawn now. Hey kids. Cha-chunk, get off my lawn. I wanted to go to Discovery Zone and my mom would always say yeah I'll take you. Calm down. Well, guess what, they went out of business and I never went. I love my mom and even though I give her a hard time every now and then, she is my favorite and she has more than apologized for not taking me when she should have. Honestly, I was also kind of a nightmare kid and never deserved to go. My local DZ closed down and was turned into a massive liquor store. I was disappointed for a few years, but came to appreciate the change. Sounds like you're describing my dad. I want to know more about Discovery Zone, please. Either you are older than me or younger, because if you are my age you 100% know about DZ. It was like Chuck E. Cheese, but for cooler older kids, or so I'm told. Thanks, Mom. Close friends. You know the kind that you grow old with. They invite you to be a bridesmaid or groomsman at their wedding. Their kids call you aunt uncle. You call each other when you're going through a rough time, etc. There's hope in adulthood. I gained social skills at around 25. I'd been paralyzingly afraid of rejection and humiliation. Then I realized that people are highly formulaic, and my behavior and speech will predict their responses. I know this makes me sound like a psychopath, but I'm just shy. Now I have a few good reciprocal friendships. That's okay. We'll just call you a shy psychopath. How does that sound? Care to share examples? Share some tips? And can you elaborate on the people are formulaic part too? Heelys, we could never afford them. When I was younger, I still don't have my own pair. I wanted them really badly, and my parents refused to get me a pair. Jokes on them, because they gave me a gift certificate when I was 18 to store that didn't carry the thing I was supposed to buy with it. I cashed out the certificate and bought Heelys. Still have them 12 years later. I have 2 pieces of information that might make you happy. One, they make them in adult sizes too. They're having a Memorial Day 20% off sale on their website. Now's the time to get you some Heelys. This is the one. Kids were leaving black streaks on the floor in middle school with those things, and eventually they got banned. Their time in the sun lasted maybe half a year. If you missed that window, you were out of luck. I practically had everything but family time. My parents were all about time and money with their multiple bargain stores. I had babysitters and I saw them as a mom or big sister, and they all left. I still remember bawling out my eyes over my favorite one leaving to get married and start her own life. Bawling my eyes out. Basketball intensifies. Something parents often are careless about, respecting and tending to that attachment of other caregivers. What happened to you? Where did you go? Those were the first 2 sentences from a 7-year-old I used to babysit when he was 4. Yeah, my babysitter told me in advance she won't be moving away with Prince Charming. I don't know if I would have preferred to have known or not like that kid. It's because of this that I want to be a house mom for my own child, if and whenever. I personally never want them to go through the trauma I did. A Barbie dream house. My parents said not to ask for one for my birthday because it was too expensive. Contemplated asking my grandma, but felt too guilty and ended up asking for a set of towels from her instead. I was 8. Towels. I assume you were a child who appreciated the gifts of socks for Christmas, lol. My daughter is 3 and asked for one last Christmas. Her grandparents spoiled her, so she got it. A Snippy snow-cone machine. They started selling them at Target for Christmas the last couple of years, and now I get the experience of being both the kid who wants one and the mom who says no, you'll play with it once and never use it again. We had one. It was more of a play with it once as summer. You had to hand crank ice into snow cone consistency, so you'd break it out on that first really hot day of summer and then remember that it actually takes a lot of work, forget about it until next summer, and repeat for 4 to 5 years. I made the mistake of buying one for my kid. BC I had no clue it was manual. Got home, realized it, waited until he had forgot about it, trashed it, bought a small snow cone maker from Walmart. Lol. I always wanted a trampoline with a net around the outside. Probably for the better that I didn't get one though. I would have probably injured myself. My kids had one until the net disintegrated, and then they used it without the net. No one ever got hurt on it. A mohawk. 6-year-old me thought it was the coolest hairstyle ever. My parents said no, because people would think I was in a gang. The office I work in is fairly laid back, but I don't think they'd appreciate it if I went ahead and got one now. It was the opposite for me. When I was 6, my dad really wanted me to get a mohawk, but I really did not want one. Hey boss, can I have a mohawk? I really wanted one of those slide swing sets for our backyard. We had plenty of space for it, and we'd see them on sale outside hardware stores all the time, but my parents never got one for me. As a kid who had one from ages 9 to 12, the most fun I got out of it was pretending it was a ship when it was only half built. It was cool to sit on the swing with the neighbor kids but you couldn't really swing much, or you'd make the whole play set kinda jump off the ground, which sounds fun but I snt. And the slide is only fun for the first few days, and then you don't really care anymore, because slides are no longer a treat. So it basically turned into a place to sit almost immediately. Not to mention the fact that our parents didn't take us to the park as much, since we had a park out back. You're meant to dig cement the four corners into the ground, so it doesn't tip when swinging. Those things were death traps. I miss them. A treehouse just didn't have the right trees for one, and Dad was too busy with work to help make one. I had one at my grandparents' cottage, in a tree that was really not suitable for a jack pines, less than ideal. Kind of terrifying. If there was any wind and the whole thing would swing back and forth a good 6 inches. Plus it was all just unpainted scrap lumber from around the cottage, so I went back out after the first winter, climbed the ladder, and immediately put my foot through the chipboard we'd used for the floor lol. I mean, gotta build a sturdy one for it to be any good I guess. I will say that when I was older, I did get to enjoy constructing a stick fort in the woods of one of my best friend's house. Took a few months, but we ended up with a pretty substantial shelter, even with partial roofs you could walk under and fire pit. It was hundreds of yards in the woods. Haven't really thought about it in a while too. Haven't seen it in probably 8 years. Wish I could go back. When I was 6 to 7 years old, I wanted to be a paleontologist. My teachers didn't know what a paleontologist was, but I loved dinosaurs and I desperately wanted to find some fossils. My parents even got me a rock hammer and some goggles for my 7th birthday, but what I really wanted was a family vacation in the Alberta Badlands, where I had read there were lots of dinosaur fossils waiting to be discovered. We never did do that vacation, but when I was 18, we moved from Ontario to British Columbia. Our first full summer here, my parents rented an RV and took my 2 younger brothers on a camping vacation. I was about to start university, so I stayed home and worked instead of going. Guess where they went? When I was 6 I found a fossil on the walk home from school. Jurassic Park came out a few months later, and I was hooked. When I was in HS I had to face the reality that my grades were really far away from what they would need to be for me to become a paleontologist. It was a sad day for sure. This might get blurry. Welp, here I go. I wanted a game console. My parents don't find it appropriate for a girl. Now their reason has changed to too expensive. Order a Northeasts on eBay. Or the mini Northeasts with the built-in games. I played those as a kid and they were awesome. Emulators are another option. Code is immortal. Nintendo is to blame for that, in the fact they had to choose a demographic to market to boys. Conversely, they're also the ones to thank for the fact games exist as they do. The reasoning for games not being appropriate for girls is baffling. Some of my fondest memories are playing split screen games with my younger sister, since I live in the middle of nowhere. Luckily I have friends who own game consoles. I'm not great at them, but damn do I love to play video games with friends. ATM, I'm working to become a game artist. My own bed. I slept on a fold-out cot for my first 13 years. Can't wait till I get my own place with a comfortable bed and warm water that doesn't go out after a minute. Mattress on floor. Right now 17-yo. 21 years old and still stuck down here. I'll learn to love it in the end. My room is more like a closet. Don't like being next to dust. If I had asthma I would probably die. Get a cheap box spring and frame. Sleeping on the floor will slaughter your sinuses due to the dust. A pogo stick. I asked for one for Christmas for like 6 years in a row. Also one of those little ball things with a ring around it that you bounced around on. I have no idea what they were called. In hindsight, I understand why my parents didn't get me either thing. I'm okay with it now, but it was heartbreaking as a kid. Pogo ball. My grandparents got my sister and myself one. Loved them. Was scared of pogo sticks. I wanted my parents to divorce because I thought it would be better than them screaming and being angry and threatening to leave all the time. They are still together and I don't know why. They literally hate each other and don't get along at all, but they stay in the same house. Exact same. My entire childhood consisted of my parents screaming at each other and then us also learning how to communicate by screaming and hitting. Even now as an adult, if I have to visit my hometown and end up staying with them, which I now know to avoid like the plague, they'll still have screaming matches regularly. They say the nastiest things behind each other's back. Everyone in both families is aware that they hate each other, but I don't think they even talk about divorce, like it's not even an option for them. Same, but with less hatred. They just don't acknowledge each other anymore, and try to make my sister and I pick sides. I never knew of a family who had parents who were actually in love with each other, until I met my boyfriend's parents. A pillow pet, does anyone remember those? They still exist. Apparently, they are still making new ones, if the Toy Story 4 splash on their website is any indication. One of those twirly things you could make splatter art with. A dad, and also some sock emboppers. More fun than a pillow fight. I never got them myself, but a friend did. We each blew one up, and I still feel lightheaded just thinking about it. This had to have been like 15 years ago. You should be more careful with other people's dads. A Nintendo. Christmas was right around the corner, and mom started dropping hints that Santa would be bringing a video game console. But Santa couldn't decide if he should bring a Nintendo or a Sega. I wanted a Nintendo. My brother wanted a Sega. The debate soon turned into a screaming match. As the argument was about to devolve into a fist fight, mom broke it up and said, "Hey, if you're going to be like this, no video games." So, yeah. Instead of a Nintendo for Christmas, I got video games banned from my house. I was an only child, so any console would have done it. But alas, being not rich and politically connected in Soviet Union had its downsides. Communism for everyone was the upside. Sarcasm. Okay, that might explain why I now have multiple consoles and computers in my household. Had an urge as I'm in a nation market stall selling vintage Nintendos, think Donkey Kong and the others with liquid crystal displays. Sadly it was closed at the time, but I would have walked away with few. To stop moving, so I could get some close friends. I went through 7 schools before college. I went to school with the same people for 11 years, and had relationships with none of them. The few I called friends were really just acquaintances. Most of them bullied me relentlessly. I always wished my parents had moved around, well, given me something to do, explore different places. Funny how the grass is always greener. Same here. Went to school with the same bunch of jerks. K8. My dad really had no idea how bad it was, and thought he was providing stability. Went to a private HS in another town, and that was a lifesaver. A trip with my friends. When I was a kid, and in my early teens, every year my friend would travel to his hometown, where his family had a small ranch, and take his friends with him. They'd have tons of fun for a weekend, and then come back telling all these wonderful stories. For some reason I still don't understand very well. My parents never let me go there, and they never explained to me why. It still makes me angry thinking about it to this day. I went on a couple trips with this one girl when I was in 8th grade. She had a big family and a camper, and, unlike my parents on our family trips, the main priority was the kids having fun. I'll never forget those trips. Cheese strings. I always wanted them, don't know why, but was never allowed. Because they are like 20% strings and 80% salt. There seems to be something wrong with your math. 20% plus 80% doesn't leave any room for cheese. I see. Carry on. Oh man, those are great. You have to go to the store and just buy them yourself, my friend. My mum bought the dairy version. They were so gross. They were so salty, it was unreal. They didn't even do the cool string thing, they were in pre-cut strips. The Disney Polly Pockets. They were made by Bluebird. They were the coolest thing ever, and my mom managed to get me Cinderella's castle and house before they disappeared, and now you can only find them on eBay. I desperately wanted the Agrabah castle, because Aladdin was my favorite Disney movie, but the Disney store my mom worked at didn't get any of them in, and she couldn't find it anywhere. About 10 years ago I found Ariel's castle, and I bought it, and I would still buy any of the other ones if I found them. My mom said she'd get me on, and she never did. I'd get myself one right now, but it's a choking hazard for my baby. I'll wait until she's 4 and can appreciate it.